Hi students, welcome to lesson number 2, Untouchability. In introduction, let us know about untouchability in India, which goes back to hoary past, though its origin and practice remain vague or unknown. The institutional inequality in the caste system manifests its extreme form in the growth of completely segregated set of caste called untouchable caste. The untouchables were called as the Chandalas in later Vedic. There was a lot of stigma against the Chandalas in the later Vedic period, but untouchability on a large scale appeared only between 600 BC and 200 AD. In this lesson, we are going to trace how the untouchability has originated, the Dalit meaning which is relating to the untouchable caste, and also the government ameliorative measures to uplift the untouchables. The lesson objectives are: 1. To understand the origin of untouchability, 2. To know the theories explaining the untouchability, 3. To know the eradication and Dalit consciousness. The origin of untouchability. In the Hindu social system, a large number of castes are outside the hierarchical Varna division of the society and were considered to be the untouchable caste. The origin of untouchability can be traced back to the times when the Aryans invaded India around 1500 BC. They looked down upon the indigenous people as culturally and radically inferior, while some of the indigenous people escaped into the jungles. The rest of them were subdued and incorporated into the Aryan society as inferior caste. In the later Vedic period, the people who escaped into the jungles began to be called Chandalas. Manu holds that the 4 Varnas originated from his arms, the Vaishyas from his thighs, and the Shudras from his feet. Rest of the caste came into being as a result of alliances among the 4 Varnas. The 2 important theories pertaining to the origin of untouchability are as follows. 1. The first theory says that discovery that the Indus Valley people spoke a Proto-Dravidian language suggests that the people conquered by the Aryans were Dravidians. They subsequently moved down south and subjugated the indigenous people there. When Aryan influence spread to the south, the Varna system and the untouchability came into existence. Thus, the Dalits were among the original tribes of South India who became isolated from the rest of the world and so were looked down upon the others. They belonged to the first wave of Dravidians who emigrated to the south and were subsequently won over by a more civilized wave who forced them to live as manual laborers. 2. The mixed caste theory offered by Manu explains that the Aryans developed a social organization wherein the Chandalas occupied the lowest position is answered by this theory. This theory explains the existence of the 4 Varnas as divinely ordained and the other caste outside the Varna scheme as a result of unlawful sexual alliances between men and women of different Varna. The Chandalas resulted as then offspring of a Brahmin woman and a Shudra man. 4 other groups were also included among the untouchables. In the years after 200 AD, untouchables came to include more groups. The label Chandala came to be used to refer to all those at the bottom of the society. The number of untouchable caste always exceeded the number of mixed origin caste, so other considerations influenced the classification system. This theory accords priority to Varna rather than Jati. To explain the origin of untouchability, recent theories have used components such as race and the concern for racial purity. When races interact, the subjugation of diverse groups by the technologically superior Aryans, the division of labor as migrant Aryans settled down adopting agricultural and then urban ways of life, incorporation of new tribes, new guilds, and new religious sect into the Aryan society. The meaning of Dalits. Let us know the term meaning and the term of Dalit. The term Dalit in Sanskrit is derived from the root dal, which means to split, break, crack and on. It means split, broken, burst, etc. 𝗳𝗏𝗧 𝗚𝗃, the founder of 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗚𝗏, a non-Brahmin movement in Maharashtra, is believed to have coined the term Dalit. He used the term to refer to the outcast and untouchables as the victims of the caste based social division of then Indian society. The Dalits were earlier known as untouchables and outcasts for centuries. The degrading terms were replaced by the British administration by depressed classes in 1919. Gandhi called them Harijans, people of God. Ambedkar did not accept Gandhi's term. He proposed the term Protestants Hindus. In 1935, the British government defined them as scheduled caste. It was during 1970s the Dalit Panther movement of Maharashtra popularized the term Dalit. Today, the term is used for Dalit people of various religions and protest movements. Dalits occupy the lowest position in the caste hierarchy based on ritual purity and occupation and outside the Varna system, which gives the traditional name Panchamas. They have been oppressed throughout the recorded history of India, relegated to doing agricultural tasks and polluting occupations like disposing dead bodies, working with leather, cleaning toilets and sewage, etc. They have been stripped of their dignity and denied basic human rights. They were considered untouchables, implying that anybody touching them would be polluted. They were denied access to roads, temples, schools, etc. to avoid pollution of other caste. To this day, thousands of villages have a separate area for Dalit houses, separate wells for Dalits, classrooms where Dalit children sit separately and tea shops with separate glasses for Dalits. Such discriminations occur despite laws against such practices. Centuries of oppressions and discrimination has resulted in poverty and its associated problems amongst Dalits. A large number of Dalit converted to religions including Buddhism, Christianity, Islam and Sikhism for equality and human dignity. Dr. Ambedkar believed that neither Marxism nor bourgeois nationalism nor republicanism provided any solution to the problem of caste. So, he turned to religion. He rejected Christianity and Islam because they did not originate to fight the caste system. He chose Buddhism and converted to it along with millions of Mahars. Till the early 1930s, the de jure definition of the depressed classes as they were then known was in terms of the religious concept of pollution. The depressed classes were defined as Hindu caste, contacts with whom entail purification on part of high caste Hindus. 1 out of every 6 Indians belong to this caste, ex-untouchables by law, but still untouchables in practice. The important ex-untouchable caste are Chamar, Dusat, Musahar, Buya, Dhobi, Pasi, Regar, Dom, Bokta and Halalhor in North India and Parayans, Palans and Chekilis in Tamil Nadu and Meher, Balshi, Bauri, Megwal, Rajbans, Mazhabi, Sikhs, etc. Though Constitution outlawed the practice of untouchability and the Untouchability Offences Act of 1955 declared it as a legal offence, yet Hindus are still deeply steeped into their concern for purity and pollution. The practice of untouchability has not been completely uprooted in the social and religious life of the country. Thus, untouchability is understood from the angles: 1. The stigma attached to certain people because of ceremonial pollution they allegedly convey, and 2. The set practice engaged in by the rest of the society to protest itself from the pollution conveyed by the untouchables. The degradation of Dalits. The scheduled caste that comprise the bulk of untouchables are technically outside the fourfold Varna scheme. These castes were imputed with maximum degree of ritual and social impurity, while their occupations were held to be lowest in normative hierarchy. Severe restrictions were imposed on these castes, also called as Dalits today, since early periods, like not allowing them to wear shirts or vest, not use ornaments, sandals or umbrellas, to use only earthenware vessels in homes, not to enter cities after sunsets and before sunrise, and keep a prescribed distance of steps from upper caste Hindus. They were thus totally ostracized. The social stigma of untouchables manifests itself in all walks of life. They are denied access to temples and to the services of the Brahmins and are shunned by the higher caste. They are born as impure and live as impure. The rest of society is so much concerned about purity that they permanently keep untouchables in a state of economic, social and political subordination. The stigma, congenital according to one's last a lifetime and cannot be eliminated by right or deed. Defined in relative to behavior, untouchability refers to the set of practices followed by the rest of the society to protect itself from the pollution conveyed by the untouchables. However, this concern with ritual pollution is not limited to the role of untouchables. It also served to keep the untouchables as in inferior economic and political position through physical separation. It is generally believed that the untouchable groups have come to realize that their problem can be solved only through effective political action. In recent times, due to reservation of post in parliament, Vidhan Sabhas, jobs, educational institutions, etc., and other privileges granted by the government, a low ritual status man has a better chance to achieve high economic and political status, while high social status becomes an individual matter. Untouchability means those restrictions imposed on lower caste by the upper caste. According to the Untouchability Offences Act of 1955, the term untouchability was explained as an offence to prevent any person in ground of untouchability from 1. Entering a place of worship open to other people professing the same religion, 2. Offering prayers in a place of public worship or bathing in sacred waters of a well in the same manner as permitted to other of the same religion, 3. Assessing or using of a ship, hotel, public conveyance, public places of entertainment, hospitals, educational institutions and so on. Dr. D.N. Majumdar views that untouchable caste suffer from various social and political restrictions prescribed by tradition, socially enforced by higher caste. According to R. N. Sharma, views that the origin of untouchability as being partly racial, partly religious and partly a matter of social custom that are as follows. 1. Racial factors. Some derogatory names were given to the Aryan races to the non-Aryan races that were already settled in India and were called untouchables. 2. Religious factors. The principles of purity and pollution implied that to maintain purity, the upper caste followed untouchability to segregate the polluted caste. 3. Social factors. These include the customs and conventions devised to share the burden of maintaining untouchability caused by racial and religious factors. Association with dirty professions such as scavenging, sweeping the roads, tanning, curing of hide, skin and the leather works lead to the feeling of untouchability. According to Nesfield, the untouchables were subjected to many economic, religious, political and educational restrictions. The stratification of Hindu, the social structure was based on caste. The stratification of Hindu, the social structure which is based on caste, the status of the individual is determined by his birth in a particular caste. Each caste member has a caste occupation which he must follow. These occupations were divided into pure and impure on the basis of purity and pollution. The Harijans, who were regarded as untouchables, followed occupations which were considered impure. They were looked down upon as one with whom even physical contact was defiling for the upper caste. Several social restrictions and disabilities were imposed on the untouchables. Some of the restrictions are as follows. 1. The untouchables were prohibited from entering villages and towns in daytime, as their shadows would defile the higher caste. They were not allowed to reside in the center of the village along with other caste. They were prevented from using roads in the daytime and were forced to work at nights. 2. Other restrictions like food habits, dress patterns and adornment of jewelry. They were totally forbidden from entering other caste locality. 3. Entering public places such as temples, theatres and educational institutions were not allowed. They could not use wells used by the other caste. 4. The untouchables were not allowed to stand other on equal terms in commercial and other celebrations. Their marriage processions were not allowed to enter the streets of village. They were denied the services of washerman, barber, etc. The untouchables thus faced severe social, civic and religious and political disabilities right from the time the caste system was in vogue in Indian society. They also faced problem of poverty, as they were by and large landless agricultural labourers. From 19th century onwards, there was a change in the attitude towards untouchables. The term scheduled caste was first used to refer to certain caste in the Government of India Act 1935. After independence, the Government of India pledged to provide through its constitution justice, liberty, equality and fraternity to all citizens without discrimination. To achieve this objective, the Government of India incorporated certain special provisions in the constitution to eradicate untouchability, which are as follows. Point 1. The preamble of the Government of India declares its assurance to provide equality, to promote fraternity, to guarantee liberty and ensure justice to all the citizens of the country. The articles 15, 16, 17 and 38 guarantee that the state shall not discriminate the people on grounds of caste, religion or class, creed, economy and education. 2. Article 17 clause 3 declares that untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. Violation of this provision is an offence punishable under law. 3. Articles 330, 332 and 334 provide reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the state legislatures. Assembly have to help them participate in the political process, and Article 16, 4, 324 and Article 335 provide reservations for scheduled caste in government offices and services. Point 5. Under Article 35, the Untouchability Offences Act 1935 was passed by the Parliament to make untouchability an offence. This act was substituted by the Protection of Civil Rights in 1976 as provided under the Act. Government of India also notified the rules PCR rules 1977 to carry out the provisions of this act. As cases of atrocities on SCs and STs were not covered under the provisions of PCR Act 1955, Parliament passed another act in 1989 which became effective from 30th January 1919. For carrying out the provisions of this act, the Government of India notified SCs and STs Prevention of Atrocities Rules 1995 on 31st March 1995. Point 6. Article 46 of the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of people, and in particular of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. Point 7. Under Article 338, a special officer was appointed by the Government of India to look after the implementation of the special provisions extended to SCs and STs. Point 8. advisory boards have been set up in all states to give suggestions to the government regarding the ways and means of protecting the interest and promoting the welfare of SCs and STs. The government welfare measures. The changes among Dalits have come through three avenues: state policy in regard to untouchable groups, reform movements at various periods of time, and the process of Sanskritization and Westernization. The amelioration of conditions of these underprivileged groups engaged in the attention of the framers of the Constitution after independence. The protective discrimination is one of three ways in which government attempts to deal with the problems confronting the Dalits. The constitutional provisions remove discrimination and benefits make them eligible. The central and the state governments have taken up various programs and schemes for the welfare of the SCs and STs, which are mentioned as follows. 1. Free education, scholarships and free books and hostel facilities are being provided to encourage and educate them. 2. Financial assistance is being provided through institutions such as banks, cooperative societies to encourage the SC members to start small scale and cottage industries. 3. Various housing schemes are taken up especially for SC members. The financial and vocational training is provided free of cost to these members to help them find employment. 4. Land reforms have been framed by the central government and are implemented by the state government for socio-economic development of people in the rural areas, including members of the scheduled caste who are mostly landless agricultural laborers. The several voluntary organizations are making efforts for the upliftment of this section of society and eradicate untouchability along with government. Among the voluntary organizations, few are Harijan Sevak Sangh, Red Cross Society, Ramakrishna Mission and Servants of Indian Society. They are providing social education to all to remove the ill effects of untouchability in a modern democratic way. Point 2. Enforcing the laws more effective to punish those who practice untouchability. The legal procedures must be simplified so that the victims of untouchability can easily approach the law for justice. 3. Creating awareness among them about various facilities and opportunities and encouraging them to avail these. 4. Checking the misuse of provisions by the middlemen. 5. To eradicate of the caste system is essential for the removal of untouchability. According to R.N. Sharma, caste system is the biggest single cause of untouchability. Thus, the eradication of the caste system will also remove the tradition of untouchability. The long-standing exploitation made the scheduled caste conscious of their separate identity, raised their self-consciousness, led to the emergence of scheduled caste movements and activated the process of Sanskritization as observed by M.N. Srinivas. The consequences of all this awareness and movements were emergence of some SCs in different parts of the country as political groups putting pressure on the national leadership for taking measures to do away with the social disabilities of the Dalits. The conscious attempts of Dalits for status mobility, the alienative movements led to the horizontal level caste consolidation of SCs by fusion of a number of subcastes into one caste group. To conclude, the untouchability is a problem which is peculiar to Indian society. In spite of the welfare programs and ameliorative measures taken by the state, there has been social sabotage side by side by the dark forces of the society. The problem could not be solved even every person thinks about other person as a human being and develops a humanistic attitude towards fellow beings, leaving all other restrictions aside. Thank you.